And so what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks is explore what it means to be part of the garden and to try to share in a message that you can then take from this place and share with other people, because the garden is an important place to be in today's culture. So over the next couple of weeks, with the support of progressivechristianity.org, we're going to look at 8 different points that support us being a progressive United Methodist Church. Now, first let me note before we get into that, this word progressive, it comes with a lot of preconceived notions, doesn't it? It's been co-opted by politics, and I want to really clearly emphasize, being a progressive United Methodist Church has absolutely nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with finding a way to live out our faith in a manner that is faithful to the Gospels and Jesus Christ in this post-modern world. So the very first point that we want to highlight in what it means to be a progressive United Methodist Church is that we believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead to an awareness and experience of the sacred. Now, what's interesting is the teachings of Jesus are found in here. This was my grandpa's Bible. And that's a translation. And the teachings of Jesus are found in here. This is the seminary Bible that we used. It's a different translation. And this is the Life Application Bible. And the Jesus' teachings are found in there as well as in here. And then guess what? I have all of these and about 150 more all on here. See, the teachings of Jesus are found in the Bible. And let me tell you about this Bible. I'm going to tell you from a clergy perspective. That is a very confusing document. If you try to start on page 1 and go to the end and try to figure it all out, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There are some things in there about love. There are some things in there about war. There's all kinds of things in there. As a progressive church, we believe that this is our guide, but we recognize it is written by fallible human beings at a certain time and in a certain place. We believe that you must read this book in the context of the 21st century. Now, as I look out, according to that book, if we lived in it exactly the way it says, we would all be in a lot of trouble except for maybe Rhonda. Because it looks like most of us cut our hair. We cut our hair. It's in there, don't cut your hair. And I don't see really any heads covered. You're also in trouble there because it's in there. I also see a lot of different fabrics woven together. It's in there. See, according to that book, those are things that are troublesome to God. But we recognize that that book and those rules were created at a certain time and in a certain place for the folks to follow. Today it's different, and we encourage you, yes, to come to the garden. And we don't care if your head is covered or if you cut your hair or what fiber your clothes is. We just ask that you wear some clothes. Now, there are other more distressing things in that book, and we do not honor those distressing things in this culture. We do not believe in a God would encourage one to offer up their daughters to be raped in place of another. We do not believe in dashing the heads of our enemies' babies against stones until they die. We do not accept that it is okay to have slaves, because guess what? It's in there. And I personally cannot believe in a God of love who encourages such action. So for me, I got to tell you, I don't eat this Bible whole, but I don't throw it away either. Oh, there is so much in there. There's so many rich things, powerful things in there. It's amazing if you open it up, what you can learn. I think as progressive Christians, we have to figure out how to follow this path of Jesus, like we just said, in a context that works for us, finding the gospel working for us in a particular way. And I am going to try to model that today, because I went through and I decided, well, what does it mean for me to follow Jesus? I am taken back to Luke, the 4th chapter, and Jesus has just come out of the wilderness. He's been tempted by the devil, and he gathers at his home or in his hometown with people, and he says this. He says, God had anointed him to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, and to recover sight to the blind, and to set the oppressed free. I like that. That is a guy in a path I can follow. That makes sense to me. But that's about him. What about me? What is required of me as we continue on this journey? And you know who does that really well? It's Micah. Micah, an Old Testament prophet, who says, what does the Lord require of you? Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. Then I take it back to this, Matthew 22, where Jesus tells us about the greatest commandment. He's asked what the greatest commandment is, and most of us know this. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That, he says, is the greatest commandment. And then the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So for me, the progressive gospel looks like this. It means that I follow Jesus, who brings good news to the poor, proclaim release to the captives, sight to the blind, and to set the oppressed free. My personal responsibility on this journey is to do justice, love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. I believe that we are called on this path to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind, and yes, to love our neighbor as ourselves. See, for me, that's the heart of the gospel, and I am a progressive Christian. The second point that they bring up is we affirm that the teachings of Jesus provide but one of many ways to experience the sacredness and oneness of life, and that we can draw from a diverse source of wisdom in our spiritual journey. Do you know that many of the stories found in here are also found in here? It's the Quran. Do you know that many sacred stories are found in here as well as in here? Many people with good and loving hearts, that's their Bible, and that's okay. Do you know that there are people who follow this and claim to be following Allah and act in evil ways that harm people? Guess what? There are some people who follow this and act in ways that harm people. Friends, these are never to be used as weapons. These are to be used as guides on the journey to help us love and care for one another. As progressive Christians, we recognize there is enough room at the table, on the table, for all the different traditions, to explore and to learn from one another from these traditions. We can learn so much from one another because, yes, there is room at this table, and it's amazing what happens when you open the books. The third point is we are inclusive of all people, conventional Christians and questioning skeptics, believers and agnostic, women and men, those of all sexual orientations, genders, and identities, those of all classes and abilities. We welcome accusers and abusers, users and recoverers, lovers and haters, wishers and dreamers, whistleblowers and liars. We welcome with open arms victims and shooters. See, this is hard. This is very hard, my friends. It is very hard to treat people the way you wish to be treated who are not behaving well, who are in fact behaving badly. See, remember, Jesus said, I didn't come to condemn this world. No, I came to love and to save the world. So we get to love one another. We get to love one another. Just watch this news this past week. We get to love Roseanne, and we get to love Samantha Bee. We get to love the Irish who are excited about repealing the Eighth Amendment and those who are devastated by it. We get to love the man in Paris that saved the little boy, and we get to love the father who was inside playing video games. We get to love Jason Seaman and Ella Whistler. And we get to love the child, yes, the child shooter. We get to love Rocket Man, and we get to love the redheaded guy. See, the truth is this is a difficult and complex text. Don't try to say this is easy. It is difficult to accept and to love one another. And if we are truly progressives, we must find a way to transform hate into love. We must find a way to continue to face the challenges that we in Christianity are facing today. We must continue to find a way, loving one another in the conditions of our lives, challenging one another, and speaking up. Our final point today is one about our behavior. Our behavior towards others should reflect the fullest expression of what we believe. Not long ago, On Being had an interview with a man named Derek Black and another man named Matthew Stevenson. Black was raised as a white supremacist in a white supremacist household. In fact, David Duke was his godfather. He was raised to believe that multiculturalism was responsible for oppressing white people in their own country. He believed that there was a great conspiracy of Jewish power. When he went off to college, he did so quietly, but somebody found out about him, and someone in the college outed him. Before you knew it, he was being treated very, very, very poorly. Black was ostracized from others, he was left out of things, and he was bullied. Then one day, a fellow student, who just happened to be one of the only Orthodox Jews on campus, Matthew Stevenson was his name, was sent this young man, Black, a text. He sent Derek Black a text and said, "Hey, what are you doing for dinner Friday night?" Derek responded, "Nothing." And he was invited to Shabbat. I'm not sure they called it Shabbat that night, but he was invited to Shabbat. He was invited to sharing conversation. Derek Black and Matthew Stevenson, in the end, became dear friends throughout college. Now, of course, it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of conversation, and it took a lot of meals. It took something like love to take Derek Black from seeing that his ideology was misguided. It took him loving Matthew Stevenson. Now, I have to say that neither Derek Black nor Matthew Stevenson are progressive Christians, but they certainly behave in a manner that I think we can learn from. They followed the path they knew. They created room at the table for everyone with different ideologies and beliefs. They ate with one another, they accepted one another, and they loved one another as they were, not how they wanted them to be. And they behaved in a loving manner, not bound by ideology or even theology, but love alone. Friends, this is important. What we believe is important in the United States today. This week, consider what is at the heart of the gospel for you. Consider the path that you're on. Realize that there is room at the table for different thoughts and ideas, and always leave an open seat. Always listen, and do so in a manner that is becoming of the gospel. In closing today, I ask you, so are you PC? Some of you look foggy. Some of you look clear. Well, guess what? You are all welcome here, and I'm glad you're here. Amen.